Welcome to the Michele Roys Show.
Welcome back to another Michele Roys Show. I'm so glad to have you here today, and I have a really special guest. Adam May, he is a clinical consultant, speaker, trauma survivor, and the author of A Fox in a Bear Trap, a book on how to ask for help. Adam, I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Adam, there's so much to unpack here. First of all, I wanted to start even with your title of your book. If you can bring us a little bit into the journey of how you even came up with this title of this book.
It's interesting. The title of this book has been a phrase I have used for the better part of probably the last 20, maybe even 30 years in regards to my ability to receive help. I I'm strongly independent almost to a fault. Uh, and a lot of the times I end up as the fox in the bear trap, meaning I don't know who set the trap and I don't know why you're coming near me if I'm in it. And so I can't trust, who you are. And if you're the hunter or whoever, even if you're there to help me, and even if you're there to release the trap, I haven't always assumed that or known that. And there's been instances where I'm even willing to chew off my own limb. Where that comes from is we actually see that in the wild with trapped foxes, wolves, things like that, where they will actually chew off their own limbs, to release themselves from whatever the trap is, and then they'll just carry on with whatever their life is, from that point. A book on how to ask for help. I wrote this book as a template for what's interesting about the book. I wrote the book to myself in a second person format. So the book reads as you, but the book is written to me because these were the skills and resources that I acquired and needed to be able to make the progress that I made throughout my late 20s into my 30s. A lot of the diligence that I had taken was the awareness of I do a lot for others, but I'm not selfish to myself, and I'm not doing these things that I promote to other people. I don't actively do them for myself. And so I had to kind of look back at that and really hone in on what do I need to do for myself so that I am fully capable of offering help and no longer having to ask for help. And that's where I've kind of gotten here today. I've previously worked since 2009 as a clinical provider, but I'm stepping away from the actual identity as a provider, and more so the consulting and the coaching and the things like that. The reasons I appreciate that more is because that puts more accountability into you. And then you reference back to me. Hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? Instead of what do I do here? What do I do next? How come I can't fix this? Blah, blah, blah. And really starting to put that back into the individual so that they are not reliant on me. And now they have, a tangible resource that they can thumb through. And that's the beauty of it. So you go to the table of index, excuse me, table of contents, and then you look at it and you say, oh, I need to get back into chapter 7. I need to get back into chapter. You don't have to start, front to back. The front to back proceeds in that order because these are, the skills partly needed, to be able to progress into the next stage. But one of the most important things about this book, especially for the ability to be able to ask for help, is how do we even formulate our own identity? How do we even formulate our own understanding of purpose or reason? What is it that we're fighting for? What is your reason or purpose? And I think oftentimes people go many years, if not a lifetime, never learning those answers. And that's, part of my responsibility. Like I said, I've shaken many hands with the faces of death. And at 37, unfortunately, I have a lot of understanding of experience about things that I never should have. Started when I was 17 years old with a cancer diagnosis. And from there, I've always been able to see behind Oz's curtain. And so being able to start, incorporating that and then tooling that for others there would be no purpose for my survival if I was truly selfish and only doing this for myself. When I say selfish, I mean I needed to put the focus and attention on me for a short window. And now that that's no longer necessary, I get to now turn that back onto others and say, not do as I say and become me, but
Mhm.
follow this and become you
So
and
it's
make
basically
that more
a
meaningful than me, you know.
like it's like a roadmap in itself, like you're saying, because you've gone through the journey, having cancer, beating cancer, then having to deal with all the different, like you were saying, the guilt that you felt by being a cancer survivor where others didn't make it, right? That was something. If you can give a little bit of a picture for the listener right now, what was Adam like as a young person? And all these tools came in hand, right? So if you can give our listeners a little bit about a glimpse into Adam.
Well, that's a loaded question. How was Adam as a young person? Adam was not well as a young person. Cancer was not my illness. I probably 12 or 13 is where I really started to develop like actual clinical depression and anxiety and suicidal thinking and questions of existence and purpose and reason and what am I doing here? The thought of not wanting to be here has existed for 20, 25 years.
Mm,
It was before a cancer diagnosis. So the reasons why not only am I professionally trained in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, but I have lived it, trauma at its finest.
yeah.
Um, and a lot of the times, some of the biggest difficulties were being diagnosed at 17. You would think that I was emotionally stunted at that point, but really my emotional immaturity goes back to that pre-adolescent 12-ish to 13-ish age. And so even to this day today at 37 years old, after making all this progress and doing all this work and all this other, stuff to be able to get to this point, I still have my moments where I get shot back and I function like I'm somewhere between 12 and 17 years old. And so being able to kind of understand emotional acuity versus intellectual acuity has really helped me kind of recognize I'm pretty smart as long as I'm not emotionally activated. It's like, okay, cool. Well, this one I have more control of, my intelligence. This one I have no control of. So these don't work, and so then I'm just going to give up and isolate and, go away. Um, and unfortunately, and the thing that I now know and understand is that you won't know that understanding until you experience it.
Yeah.
So if I can catch somebody in our previous conversation, I talked about how I in past I viewed myself as a gatekeeper to hell.
Mm,
What that means is I'm standing there at the gate ready to receive you, and I can either show you a map of how to get through hell, I can walk you through hell, or we can hang out here and turn back and go the other way because there's really resourceful stuff back here, but it's not necessary
mm,
to learn.
yeah.
And really being able to utilize that not just from a boat of experience of, oh, I've got a clinical degree, oh, I've got a advanced academia degree, I've got um, you know what, 2009 to current 16 years experience, blah blah. No, it's I've been here,
I lived it.
me,
Yeah. Hmm.
not the provider, the person.
Yeah.
This is for credibility and legitimacy, but this is real life. And I think that's what's created for me the ability to even recognize that I wasn't doing enough in the individual clinical setting.
Mm,
I could see 7 to 10 people a day, 3 to 4 times a week, and that was sufficient for me and I guess my needs, as a provider at the time, but really recognizing like, well, what happens if I put 5 people in the same room? And then now all of a sudden they've formatted and built an intensive outpatient program, where we've got 20 or 30 people now coming through once a week instead of, 7 to 10.
mm,
And now it's getting into that scaling. Now it's getting into that, I no longer have to be refined or restricted into Kansas City, Missouri, because Kansas City, Missouri is not the only place where people have these types of issues and struggles.
yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting in Kansas City, Missouri, speaking to a Brazilian born person who lives in Ireland. Like, this is what it's supposed to be about.
Yes.
This
Connection.
type of networking and this type of rec- acknowledgement that we are all the same,
Mm,
regardless of where we come from and the histories that we have. Our experiences are different, yes, but we as people,
yeah.
there's 5 or 6 variations of people type, and each of us fall in that, no matter creed, color, nationality, or anything else.
Absolutely. I think something that I find very interesting with you, Adam, not only that you've lived the experience and you're able to show a roadmap for others and you're in a mission right now to help others, but it's also that it is an invisible illness, right? Mental health is an invisible illness. Chronic pain is an invisible illness a lot of times. And I think the people that are listening, a lot of the people will identify with that. The struggles that it is to face something that you can't show, right? Pain you can't show, you can't quantify it, but you feel miserable. And sometimes people can feel really lost. They don't want to ask for help because how can they express to others what they're going through when they can't make sense of it themselves? How do you help people in that situation?
In the first few chapters of the book, it has to do with beginning to understand like your just daily operation and where struggle exists. One comment that I made to you in our preliminary conversation is that my degree is actually a master's of science, not a master's of art. And there is a very specific difference between those two practices. One's primary intervention and just the talking. This is, I need numbers, I need tangible
Mm,
stuff that shows me that you are either worse, better, or no change at all. And because we don't have those, I've said that to people since I began this. I wish I could take an x-ray of your brain or body and say you've got this much depression and this is how we'll get rid of it. We're gonna stabilize, we're gonna put your head in a cast for 6 weeks and then you're fine, and then maybe do some physical therapy after that, but otherwise you'll be good, you'll be peachy. Um and the problem with that the other problem with that, because one of the things I really have to educate people about is the acknowledgement of more days than not.
mm,
Because there are often times where people will ebb and flow so much that they just think that that's normal. They think
mm,
that, and it is in some ways, but it depends on how much you're ebbing and flowing.
right.
And when you can look at it statistically, because we have an odd number of days, if you tell me that the issue that you're dealing with is 4 days or more, then we need to address that. If it's 3 days or less, that's where you have to be the one that says this interferes with my quality of life.
Mm, yeah.
Well, what does that mean? That's my responsibility, is how do I help you recognize what is or is not an actual interference to your quality of life? Is this habit or behavior that you're doing actually interfering with your quality of life, or is it your interpretation or your misunderstanding or your proper understanding?
Mm,
And that's where, yes, my core background is cognitive behavioral, so getting into, I've worked in substance use since 2009. So
mm,
the one question I always asked, and the one question that made my job the easiest, what is the purpose of the behavior? Not why are you using, what
mm,
is the purpose of your behavior?
right.
What are you trying? I didn't have, I was just talking to my mom this morning because, when you talk about silent illness, apparently I have high cholesterol, like severely high cholesterol. I am 6 foot tall, 178 pounds. You physically look at me and you wouldn't think that I could be high risk for heart disease or whatever else, but apparently I am.
Mm,
Um, and okay, now I've got tangible numbers. Now I got things to look at. Well, my mom says, how do you sleep? And I said, well, 6 hours if I'm lucky. And I
mm,
said, I've always struggled with that. I never had an alcohol problem. I had a problem managing pain,
yeah.
whether it be physical or mental. And I had a problem managing my ability to sleep. I've had insomnia since I was little,
Yeah.
toss, turn, sweat too much. It wasn't just the physical body, hurting when I lay down. That's a new issue that developed 20 years ago because of cancer. But sleep has never been like I say, if I'm lucky if I get about 6 hours.
Yeah.
I will lay in bed for 8 to 9, but there's at least a window of an hour and a half to 2 hours in the middle of the night where I'm just up.
Mm.
Is it pancreatic activation, like they say, at 3:45 a.m.? I don't know, because it seems to be somewhere in between 2 and 3:30. So there's something, so there's maintenance on my end that maybe I need to do. But
Mm.
again, thinking back into the original problems with the substances that I had, what was the reason?
Yeah.
What was the purpose of the behavior? I hurt, I didn't want to think, and I was really, really tired.
Mm.
Had nothing to do with physical addiction to alcohol. I stopped on a dime
Yeah.
after drinking a fifth and a half a day for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then decided for 30 days. Well, I didn't decide. My wife walked out on me and left, and we got a divorce.
Mm.
And then I was like, well, maybe at this point I should, do something different,
Change.
because this doesn't seem like a good direction for me to head in.
Mm.
I was above 300 pounds at that point. Like I had just posted in a recent podcast interview, the last time I looked at a scale was approximately 306 pounds, but
Mm.
that was not the highest weight that I've ever been. So really, 25, 26 was when that all happened. And then that's when I say 27 is when I got sober,
Mm.
but 33 is when I got well.
Yeah.
Because again, the alcohol was never the problem. Once I began to understand what was the purpose of these behaviors, then I could understand this is the antecedent. This
Mm.
is what I have to address.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful point because finding out for ourselves, and each person's going to be different. What's their why? What's causing them to act the way they're acting? What's underneath, right? Is it because you're trying to cope with something, or is it like you're saying, is it the pain? What is it, the mechanism that you're using to help yourself? And for me, it's always trying to find what are the healthy ways that I can help myself, whether it be meditation, mindfulness, breath work, to deal with pain and to deal with something that's constant, right? But I know a lot of the listeners out there, they don't have that. And I guess peeling back, and I think your book is going to be great for them to be able to see here is a little roadmap for you.
Right.
This is a little thing that you can do and find out what is it that's causing you. Like you said, it's not about the alcohol, it's what's underneath that.
Right.
And the shame that you could have felt, the frustration, even overcoming cancer. That's huge and well done for you for doing that. But it's a journey, isn't it? Our whole
Well,
experience a
but
journey.
I got to cut you right there, because even that makes me uncomfortable when you say that, because
Okay.
to me, it's just like a Tuesday, and that's just the way that cancer was. My sister ended up diagnosed a year and a half after I got diagnosed. So the way my family looks at cancer is the way that your family looks at the flu. Um, so and it was because, again, you go into the survivor's guilt, you can go into
Mm.
everything else, and it's kind of like I beat cancer, and then I tore hell for the next 10 years.
Mm.
So what good did I do just by, I beat cancer, good job? It's like, well, the next 10 years weren't good. They didn't look good. I mean, they were good on paper, but not in real life.
Yeah.
And how come it took me to 27, and again, that's where I we were talking the other day about, well, how come you didn't write the book sooner? I couldn't. I
Mm.
literally couldn't. I was not in a place well enough where I actually could write it resourcefully and successfully, whether it was because of the alcohol, whether it was because of the gabapentin,
Mm.
which causes drunk brain in the same
Yeah.
way that alcohol does. I was not operating at my highest, efficiency and acuity, and whatever else. The best thing about this book, and the one thing that I want people to know and kind of understand, is that we overcomplicate everything.
Mm.
It's really not that hard. I mean, even with the stuff that I'm even doing at this level, the more advanced stuff, like a creating leadership program, writing a book. I've got other books that I'm writing. I'm managing a consulting firm. I run a stem cell. Like once you find where you align and how your energies move, it operates so efficiently. We are working machines. That's the way our bodies work. We are machines that are organic.
Mm.
I'm partly inorganic because of prosthetic hip and a fake leg, but it's the same type of logic that I need fuel. I need to uh, I need to create energy. I need to conserve energy, and I need to use energy,
Mm.
and then I need to rest, and then I need to repeat. And if somewhere in between those steps I'm doing good things for other people, then that's a really, really good place to be.
Yeah.
I don't want to just help people get better. I want people to define the best versions of themselves.
Yes.
I've said recently, the best version of yourself is whatever you define it as in that moment.
Mm. Yeah.
You often, I've said this in clinical work, we've said this forever, just try your best for today. It doesn't mean 100%. If you can only give 20, then that's your best for today, but always do your best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's where people struggle, is that they feel like if I can't operate at my highest efficiency, I will never be able to come out of this hole.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really what you're saying about the small steps. It is the tiny little things. For me, it's making my bed in the morning and making the decision to get dressed. Those are the smallest little steps, but they stack up and
Right.
they make, they create momentum and giving myself kindness and grace for the days that I can't do it much. Or if I got up and I made my bed at 7 at night and my husband's like, why did you even bother? It's like, because I said I was going to do it, so I'm
You
going to do
did
it.
it.
And
Right.
I'm back again at it. Doesn't matter. But I did it exactly. So I think for me, it's so important for others to see those small little tiny micro steps that they can take as well that can help
Right.
them in their journey. Because it is true. Sometimes they feel overwhelmed. Look at so and so, look at whoever, they're achieving this, achieving that, and we're not. But at the same time, everybody's running a different race, right? We're on our own lane and we need
Yeah.
to find
Right.
what works for us. So I
Well,
think it's interesting what you said about the energy because it's for exactly that. You need to be able to put that energy into something good and then things start lining up for us, right?
so this little book is 180 pages. So it's 10 chapters and it's 180 pages because it, excuse me, and even the core of the chapters are more application and work,
Mm.
like an actual workbook, than it is, reading and whatever else. Because one thing that I've always recognized, like for instance, this is Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. It's a template
Super.
that
Yeah.
everybody should have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's,
Yeah.
that's the difference here.
Hmm.
Um, this is a textbook. This is a manual. This is a book of reference that will go on the shelf for 100 years, and you can thumb through and look at really cool stuff, but you really can't piece it together or comprehend it unless you go back to the very beginning of the chapter, or possibly even the very beginning of the book. I've read this book twice now, and there's still things that I'm gathering and capturing, like, oh, I didn't even
Notice that.
put that together. Because
Yeah.
sometimes if you flood the system with too much,
Mm.
could I tell you after reading this twice now what the seven habits are? No. But I know the core concepts of what Kobe's talking about. With this is more designed for you to be able to open this up and say why these feelings and habits inhibit seeking help. Oh, helplessness, hopelessness, worthlessness.
Mm.
Well, what is helplessness? Helpless means that I can't be helped. So what's then hopelessness? Well, hopeless means if I can't be helped, then I give up hope.
Mm.
And if I give up hope, then I'm of no worth. Those
Yeah.
scale and they progress. You don't
Mm.
feel them all at any given moment. We interchange between them every so often.
Yeah.
But if you can get into the I am worthy of being helped,
Mm.
then that's all you need to know from that chapter.
Yeah.
There it is. You didn't have, you don't have to read 40, 50 pages and do things for the next 3 weeks
Yeah.
to figure out, it's getting back into the what is my why? What is my purpose? What is my reason? I don't know.
Mm.
How can we ask that question without it inducing agitation? How can
Mm.
we, what is the rush and urgency? That's one thing that I've struggled the most with.
Yeah.
I've been told, you know, you have more likelihood of dying than you have surviving. And so that's what kind of accelerates me into I have to get this done, I have to get this done, I have to get this done. But then there's often times where I'm turning into the rabbit from Alice in Wonderland where I'm never actually late to anything.
Yeah.
In my brain, 10 minutes early is 5 minutes late.
I know.
So what is my urge? I'm 37 years old, and what do you know, I don't have to do this tomorrow.
Mm.
I didn't write this book for monetary value. If I sell 100 copies, that's great. Um, it just means that it's now in 100 people's hands.
Yeah.
And then hopefully there's some level of a contagion where it at least gets handed off to somebody else. And I've had quite a few people that say, um, I'll circle back with them and say, hey, I was hoping for some insight about the book. I wanted to see how you felt about it. And they said, oh, I read a couple chapters and I gave it to my nephew, and he's got it now, and he's reading it from the cover. I'm gonna go buy another copy, and then because I have that conversation, they now go buy another copy for themselves. I mean, that is how this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Don't just buy it for yourself. Buy 2 copies so that you can give one to a friend or family member or whatever else. I had a wife ask me, how can I get my husband to read this? I said, buy a copy and leave it on the counter, and I guarantee within 2 weeks he'll pick it up at least once.
That's so true.
At the very least, he'll read the back of it, and maybe that will be sufficient enough, to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
I've
I think
worked in
that's so
adolescence.
important.
Yeah, I've worked in adolescence since the beginning of all of this, since 2009, because I, from 17 to 19, was being told, you're gonna die, you're living life the best, blah blah blah. Reason why I work so well with those populations and beyond
Mm.
is because that is one of the most important transitions of personal development and identity, 17 to 19.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in a pediatrics hospital while all my friends are beginning, to go to college and figure out, like, what do you want to be when you go? What's your major? That was always a
Mm.
question you get asked at your senior graduation party or whatever. What's your major going to be? Oh, I haven't decided yet. We had some folks that were like, I'm going to do this, this, and this is my whole plan laid out. And then other folks that are like, oh, I'm not really sure. And then me, I'm just hanging out in a pediatric hospital watching a 24/7 puppy channel, which I tell you is the best. And I wish it was on every program provider because it literally is like a bird's eye view of puppies in a little playpen just
Oh.
playing. And that's all
Oh.
that it is. So, and again, that's where the majority of my 20s, I struggled with, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
I didn't survive for this, whatever this was. But the problem is that was such a generalized statement
Mm.
that it actually had no meaning. I didn't sign up for this. Okay, well, then I need to make something better of it. That's what I finally figured out.
Yeah.
Life, I since I was a kid, I never wanted to be given an identity. There's a book. The movie's terrible, but I strongly recommend everyone read the book called The Giver,
Mm.
where it's this dystopian future. It's a young adult read that I picked up at the Scholastic Book Fair. If you're at all familiar with that, we have those in the United States, and it was these big events, in elementary school, where these big cases would show up, and they'd open up, and they'd have like a plethora of all these books, and you'd come with your little $20, and you could get like 6 or 7 things, back in that day. Um, but this book, it's this dystopian future in this black and white world, and everyone is tasked with a job. At 12 years old, you go to the giver, and the giver gives you your communal responsibility
Mm.
for everyone. There's no history of pain. There's no history of trauma. There's no history of anything. Everyone's peaceful. Everyone's happy. Now, mind you, it is black and white, and everyone wears the same thing and looks the same. But then this little guy comes in, he's 12 and he comes in there, he gets tasked his job, but then he asks the giver, how come the apple's red?
Mm.
And then from there, the whole book changes.
Mm.
And I read that book and I said, I think I'm the kid that sees a red apple, and that's where kind of perspectives of life in the world kind of shifted and changed as
Mm.
I began to kind of see behind Oz's curtain. And when I say that, especially going into like early, I was 17, diagnosed into a pediatrics hospital. So I was sometimes, more often, I was closer in age with the nurses that were treating me than I was the general population of the other cohorts being
Mm.
treated. Because the average age at the hospital I was at was about 6.9 years old, and I'm 17. The next oldest kid that was being treated at the same time was 14 years old. If you even look at functional differences between a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old, even those are significant enough that you don't have good associations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've got these, 22 to 25-year-old nurses, because every nurse that comes out of school wants to be a pediatric nurse, and in a teaching hospital, and they're giving me all the insights about education, about medical, as well as all the insights about how hospitals really work and where money actually goes and how
Yeah.
things really operate. So people always ask, why didn't you become a doctor? And it's like, well, because I lived in a hospital and I saw how bad it was. And I knew I
Sure.
couldn't fix it. So what I had to do was fix the people that it broke. So that's why I went into clinical.
Yeah.
Now what the responsibility is to help, help people recognize there is purpose of your history. So how do we take things from that and make it resourceful for you to be more skillful, for you to apply it into your life, into the life of others?
Mm.
And so that's where, with the book, with the leadership program, with everything that I'm actively doing, it's now, I keep saying my responsibility. I don't mean like I'm tasked and if I don't do it, I fail. Like, no, it would just be pointless for me to have survived and to not do anything with it. And again, it's not for monetary value. It's for, if I can do this, I know somebody else could do more,
Yeah.
because
It's
I'm
the
just
ripple
a regular.
effect, isn't it?
Exactly. And that's what this is supposed to all be about.
Yeah. But it is. We're here to, I think, of be of service. Every single thing we go in our lives is for a purpose. And if we're able to use that purpose, like I said, I want to use my pain for good. All the things that I've learned through this, all the how the journey has brought me here, can I still be grateful? Can I still be joyful? Can I still look at how I can contribute regardless of my limitations? And here we are. We have a podcast as well with that. We have the book as well with that. But I think it's brilliant what you're doing as well, Adam. And I think I really want people to be able to connect with you and connect with your message and definitely get a book as well. I need to get my book here as well as soon as possible so that I can read it through. I think it's such a good resource because not only have you gone through this experience, then you got the clinical as well to back it up. So you lived it, had to do the whole identity work, had to put all the pieces together, and you're like, hey, I cracked the code. Here is the code. Would you like to understand the code as well and use it in your own life? So I think that's really good. How can people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Probably the fastest is in the instagram.com/adam.may.motivates. Secondary would be the main website, www.askadamconsulting.com. The book is available all throughout the world on barnesandnoble.com and Amazon.
Perfect.
There may be limitations on hardback availability on international for Amazon, but in the United States, there is a hardback version, there is a paperback version, and there's also an ebook version. I would advise against the ebook version unless you have like an Amazon Scribe, because the format of the book is predominantly, a workbook format
Right.
intended for you to write into. It is free on Nook and Kindle. But again, if you're going to do it in that manner, make sure that you're doing side notes on your own journal, so that you're actually it's really resourceful to read through, but it's
Perfect.
even better, to do
To do
that.
the work, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, on my website, you can see the information about my podcast, Defying Despair, which is available on all platforms. We'll begin, I'm doing a relaunch, here in the next coming month. I have one episode posted from a year ago, but I haven't done much more of it because I've been, focusing diligently on the book and getting other
Sure.
things done. And then also, if you want to go to the website and read about the the Vidka leadership model, it's
Mm,
also on there as well.
perfect. Well,
Yeah,
I'll have that all in the show notes as well. What
that's
would be
perfect.
one of your parting message or sentence that you would like to leave the listener with?
Understand your reason,
Mm,
define it, and then defy it.
okay. Wow. I like that. Really good. Define it and define it. You have to define it. That's very true. Wow.
Yeah, and again, I think that's the most important thing, is that the best versions of ourselves is what we define it as in that moment.
Mm,
It's not, we don't get a mailer that says, "Congratulations, you completed the best version of yourself. Here's your certificate." Like, that'd be cool.
yeah.
And if I could figure out a way to do that, that'd be cool. But it's not possible because we're ever evolving, we're ever growing, and we're supposed to be.
Yes.
There's,
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it, is that we are ever evolving.
Yeah,
So
it's true. Thank you so much, Adam. This is full of amazing tips, and I love the conversation we had. Thank you for bringing a little bit of your light and love to us. And I really wish you all the best, and I look forward to reading the book. And for everybody listening there, please do get in touch with Adam, and please do get a copy of his book. Do the work and define your own reasoning as well, so that we can continue doing our best to make the world a better place. May God bless and keep you. Bye for now.
thank you.
This was the Michele Roys Show.